Have you ever questioned what it really means to live at the threshold? To seek balance between faith and doubt, between the sacred and the world that mostly isn't paying attention? This is the hidden threshold, a space for the lived, evolving practice, a place where the sacred and the ordinary keep meeting and neither one stays the same. Rooted in pagan and magical tradition, but open to anyone who's ever tried to live what they believe. I'm Veyrin Vale, and I'm glad you're here. Let's begin. I'm scrolling through my feed, and there it is, a post. Someone's thrown out something political or religious. It doesn't even matter which, but you can tell it's crafted to set people off. Absolute rage bait. My thumb stops. I feel that old urge nagging at me to respond, to push back, to correct them, to make sure anyone reading the comments knows exactly what I think. That used to be me, always jumping in, way too often, honestly. It's just so loud out there right now. Everywhere you look, politics, culture, online spaces, it feels like the world demands you jump in and pick a side. Not just quietly either. No, you're supposed to declare it over and over, like your identity depends on it. And underneath all that noise is this unspoken rule. If you're not saying something, then you're obviously with the other side. Silence? People take it as agreement with whoever they've decided is the enemy. I get hit from both sides. The religious crowd assumes if I'm not Christian, I must be anti-Christian. Maybe even anti-Jesus, anti-faith, anti-everything. Politically, it's the same. If I'm not waving one flag, I must be glued to the other. There's just no space left for what's real, what's always messier and more complicated than either extreme wants to admit. So here's where my mind keeps going. What does it actually mean to have real convictions? Something honest, deep down in your bones, when the world keeps begging you to put on a show. I'm not interested in being louder. I don't care about crushing someone in the comments. I want something different. I want to know if you can hold your ground and actually mean it without needing to make a big announcement to the world. This season has been about what a lived magical life actually looks like from the outside. The objects we carry, the spaces we build, the marks we make. But the outside isn't just about what we wear or how we look. It's also about what we say, what we post, where we draw the line and where we don't. The way we move through a world that's loud and demanding and constantly asking us to pick a side and announce it. That's the direction I'm heading. Let's see where it takes us. I've seen this binary thinking show up in two ways, and honestly, I've caught both of them myself. First, there's the religious version. If I'm not Christian, some folks assume I must be against Christianity, against Christians, against Jesus and the whole faith. They even expect I might be hostile to anyone who believes in it. The logic is weirdly rigid. If you don't share my belief, you're automatically working against it. It's almost like the only choices are believe exactly what I believe or fight against it. Then there's the political version, which runs on the same track but with different names. If I don't back a particular party or candidate, people assume I must be rooting for whoever's on the other side. There isn't any space in this mindset for neither, actually, or it's complicated, or I've got specific problems with both. You're either with us or you're with them. And if you don't shout your support for our side, you get tossed to the other camp automatically. But here's the truth. Neither version is really about me. It's all about the limits of the framework doing the assuming. Have you ever sat with a viewpoint that doesn't fit either side and felt pressured to pick one anyway? That pressure is real, and it generally comes down to a failure of imagination. Binary thinking only sees two choices, so anything that isn't option A automatically gets sent to option B, even if it doesn't belong. It's not that the person is out to get you. They just don't have the tools to see anything else. The system isn't built to register a third option. It's not even hiding it. It's just not wired for it. That's exactly where the middle path lives. But let's be clear, it's not just a mushy mix of the extremes. It's not halfway between A and B. The middle path is a third spot, fully separate, and the binary system can't acknowledge it because it's got no room for anything besides those two slots. If you choose that path, you're going to bump into something uncomfortable. Some people will keep mistaking your silence, or your lack of rallying cries, for agreement with what they dislike, because their system only reads two signals, and yours isn't one of them. That's not a sign you lack conviction. That's just what it looks like when your stance doesn't show up on their radar. Here's what the practice actually gets at. Light and shadow aren't the same as good and evil. That's the first big point, and it's worth thinking about for a second, because hardly anybody draws that line. Light and shadow balance each other. They're not arch-enemies in some cosmic grudge match. They just are, working together because both matter. Neither one's the ultimate goal. Neither one's the problem. Here's the surprise. Good and evil need balance too. It's not a war, it's a balancing act. That's not just dodging the question of right and wrong. It's shifting how we even consider what those words mean. The middle path grows out of this idea. It's about finding balance between science and mysticism, not throwing one out or clinging only to the other, but taking both seriously. Same thing goes for spirituality and the modern world. You don't have to hide in one to keep the other safe. Let them cross-pollinate. Every path has something real to offer, and it's not just because we're being nice or tolerant. This framework just assumes that truth shows up in more than one spot. The real work is spotting where different truths overlap, not fighting over which one gets the last word. So what if you applied this idea to every either-or situation? Every us versus them? Every you're with us or you're against us? What if every one of these wasn't about picking sides, but about finding balance? If you did that, it'd change how you react. The first move wouldn't be to choose. You'd look at what each side actually cares about, what's true there, what they're guarding, what they're scared to lose. Then you'd figure out where both sides can stand together, instead of where one has to fall. That's a lot tougher than just picking your team. Anyone can choose a side. Holding that tension, actually wrestling with both truths, that takes real effort. That said, balance isn't the same as treating every position as equally valid. Sometimes, one side of an argument is built on something that simply isn't negotiable. And when that's true, looking for the overlap isn't balance anymore. It's just blurring the line for the sake of comfort. If a position requires removing rights from people or treating some people as less than others, there's no version of finding the middle that doesn't mean compromising the non-negotiable itself. Guilt by association is a real pressure. Agreeing with someone on one thing can feel like it drags you toward agreeing with everything else they stand for, but it doesn't have to. You can hold the specific point of agreement and still refuse the larger position entirely, because supporting any part of it ends up supporting the whole. That's not a contradiction of balance. It's what gives balance its shape. Balance isn't a tool for avoiding judgment. It's a tool for making sure your judgment is actually about the thing itself, and not just about which side is making noise that day. That's what grounds this conviction. We're not saying, I don't care, or everybody's right, whatever. People mix that up with balance all the time, but it's not. The conviction is most truth lives in the space between things, the relationships, not the wins. If you try to flatten that tension just to make things neat and tidy, you don't get clarity. You get a smaller, less honest picture. Holding that tension, wrestling with both sides, is the practice. It's not sitting on the sidelines. It's an active, specific position. And funny enough, it's the one place where the usual binary logic can't even find you. For a long time, my approach was dead simple. See something, say something. If I spotted a post that was wrong, outrageous, or just itching for a response, I jumped in. Every time. It felt like I was standing up for what I believed in, like I was putting my convictions to work out loud. I told myself, I believe this, so my beliefs are driving the show. When I look back, though, I realized that's not what was really happening. Most of the time, I was just reacting. The post was practically built to make me respond in exactly that way, and like clockwork, I did. The fact that I meant what I said didn't actually matter. I wasn't the one in the driver's seat. The post was. When's the last time you fired off a reaction and actually felt better after? Genuinely better, not just that quick flash of satisfaction. I honestly can't name a single instance. Sure, there's a little rush when you write a clever response or feel like you scored a point, but it fades quick, and underneath, there's still this buzz, a background hum of irritation that doesn't go away just because you typed something out. You're still tense, still thinking about it an hour later. That doesn't feel like conviction. That feels like noise, just dressed up. Eventually, the way I saw things started to change. I realized none of these reactive comments were actually shifting anything. Not the other person's mind, not the overall conversation, not even my own mood, unless you count a brief spike that disappeared just as fast. All I was really doing was adding more noise and tying my name to it. That was the whole deal. But responding is different. It doesn't always look different from the outside. A reaction and a response might look identical written out. The difference is in what powers them. A reaction comes from the post, the bait, the trigger, whatever got your hackles up. A response comes from somewhere else. It's powered by your own conviction, something that stands with or without the latest post showing up in your feed. Now, I keep it simple. If I wouldn't say this except for the post, if the only reason I'm even thinking about it is because the post exists, then it's probably just a reaction. But if it's something I'd say anyway, and the post just happens to be relevant, that's a response. Practicing this is what makes all the difference. When you stand on solid ground, when your beliefs aren't something the latest controversy has to drum up for you, you realize you don't have to bite every single baited hook. It's not that you don't care. Caring truly isn't the same as reacting. Mixing those two up is exactly how you end up making noise, instead of actually standing for something. People are always making noise about what counts as real conviction. You see it everywhere. Social media, heated debates, even casual conversations. There's this built-in idea. If you truly believe something, well, you'd be shouting it from the rooftops all the time. The logic flips things around. The more someone hammers home their position, the more genuinely they must believe it, right? And if you're quiet, people figure you just don't care, or worse, you're too scared to speak up. Silence gets mistaken for indifference, or maybe some kind of weakness. I really don't think that's how it works at all. In fact, I think it's exactly backward. It matters less what you say and more what you actually do, especially when nobody's paying attention. I'm talking about the stuff that shows up in your everyday life, when it's just you and the choices you make, without any audience watching or clapping. That's the part that reveals what you really believe, not the version of you that pops up on a timeline, not the declarations in public, not the arguments you win for an audience. That's all just window dressing, the PR version of belief. If you want to see the truth, look at what you repeat when nobody's around. Notice the small, private decisions, the stands you take when they get you exactly zero applause or even pushback. That's the heart of the conviction. Let's talk about something specific: balance. It's a principle I try to live by, not just a nice idea I mention now and then. I don't make big posts about it, and you won't catch me waging battles in comment threads over it. But you'll find it every time I slow down in the middle of some either-or argument, looking for the core reason on both sides, instead of diving headfirst into one camp. I let it show up in the standards I don't compromise, even when sticking to them costs me popularity or an easier life. A lot of this isn't glamorous. It's the daily, sometimes boring work of holding tension, letting messiness exist instead of forcing a neat answer just to make things easier to explain. And you know what? Those moments don't need an audience. Their realness doesn't disappear just because no one saw it happen. It's kind of like the difference between waving a flag and standing on solid ground. Flags exist to be noticed. That's their whole job, to send a message to everyone watching. The ground, on the other hand, it isn't trying to get anybody's attention. It's steady, always there, keeping you on your feet, whether or not anyone recognizes it. Quiet conviction is still conviction. Maybe it's even the purest kind because it has nothing to do with being seen. It isn't theater. Performance always needs somebody watching. But if your belief is still there when the crowd goes home and the lights go off, that's the part you can trust. That's the truth, the core, the bit that sticks when everything else falls away. So I'm holding the phone, staring at this post that's clearly designed to wind people up. The kind of rage bait that almost dares you to jump in and start arguing. I used to dive right in, basically on autopilot. My thumb would have been flying across the glass before I even realized what I was saying. But today, my thumb holds still. I don't type a thing. I just let the moment be, set the phone down, and breathe. Honestly, there was a time when that kind of silence would have felt like a defeat. Like I was letting someone else have the last word, or like not chiming in meant I secretly agreed. I'd sit with this itch that maybe I'd missed my chance, that if I didn't speak up, something important would just float off, unacknowledged. Silence used to feel an awful lot like surrender. But here's the truth. It was never about losing or winning. Staying quiet isn't the same as backing down, not even close. What's changed isn't that I suddenly have better arguments or a louder voice. It's just that the ground I'm standing on feels more solid now. It's the steady sense that I don't need to shout about what I believe for it to be real. My convictions, the ones about balance, about sitting with tension instead of snapping under it, about knowing what matters most, they don't need to be put on display every single time I see something provocative online. Those non-negotiables are still right there, even when I keep them to myself. They were there long before this post popped into my feed, and I'm pretty confident they'll stick around long after. That's the real gift of practice, I think. It doesn't guarantee you'll win every internet argument, or any, really. What it gives you is a place to stand that doesn't disappear just because you refuse to jump into the fray. You stop having to prove yourself over and over, and it's such a relief. So yeah, the post is still right there on the screen. And no, I'm not going to answer it. I don't need to. And honestly, that feels pretty good. If something from today stayed with you, you don't have to figure it out right now. Let it sit and do what it does. That's usually where the good stuff happens anyway. You can also find writing from this same place, shorter pieces on Substack and longer ones on Medium. There are links in the show notes. I'm Veyrin Vale, and this has been The Hidden Threshold, part of the Obscura Meridian family of projects. Thanks for being here.